The United Nations Security Council is meeting today at the request of Russia to discuss the Kremlin's claim that the United States is operating bio-warfare labs in Ukraine. The U.S. has dismissed the claim, addressing the issue during a television address. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says if you want to know Russia's plans, look out for what they actually are accusing others of. Our correspondent in New York, Denselow, is covering this story for us. He joins us now live. So Russia claims U.S. and Ukraine are developing biological weapons. The U.S. already dismissing this as laughable.
Shahan, that's absolutely right. We heard from Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who's the US ambassador at the United Nations. She said she's only going to say this once, that Ukraine doesn't have a biological weapons program. She says that it has a public health program and that there are public health centers across Ukraine that are, in certain cases, funded by the United States. She said very clearly that these public health centers are publicly transparent and they're only there to help people when it comes to fighting diseases like the COVID-19 pandemic. She reiterated that they are not there to create biological weapons. She warned that this is very much seen as a false flag operation by Russia and that there are real concerns that this is a pretext for Russia using things like chemical weapons on Ukraine themselves in the future. So the message from the United States is that this is a massive concern going forward as they seek to, in the words of Linda Thomas-Greenfield, Russia seeks to normalise the use of these kind of weapons that would be a clear violation of international law. We've had that message reiterated by the US's allies, France and the United Kingdom. We heard from France's ambassador to the United Nations that said that no one is fooled by Russia's lies. Barbara Woodward going perhaps even further, the UK's ambassador to the United Nations, saying that Russia's accusations were wild, baseless and irresponsible conspiracy theories with not a shred of evidence.
Yeah, so this is not the first time Russia makes these allegations, right? What evidence does the Putin government say it actually has, though?
That's absolutely right, Shahan. This week we heard from Russia's defense ministry that accused Ukraine, with the support of the United States, of doing things like experiments using coronavirus is on bats and perhaps exploiting the migratory pattern of birds from Russia or from Ukraine to Russia, perhaps as a means of attack. We've heard from Sergei Lavrov speaking in Turkey this week. He said that these are not peaceful experiments. We've heard just a few moments ago from Vasily Nembenzia, the Russian ambassador to the United Nations. He said that there were documents that suggest that Ukraine has at least 30 bio labs in the country that were conducting what he said were very dangerous experiments, things like cholera and anthrax being developed, other lethal diseases, he said, using synthetic biology. Important to stress, though, that we heard from representatives from the United Nations speaking at the Security Council. They said they had no such evidence that these kind of facilities exist.
Yeah, so what's the Ukraine's response been to all of this?
Well, Shahan, as you rightly mentioned, the message from Ukrainian officials is that you just need to see what Russia is doing to, or what they're accusing other nations of, and that they say is a precursor for what they are planning, or at least conducting themselves. Of course, Russia has accused Kiev of being the aggressor in the Donbass region, something that Ukraine has vehemently denied. Now, when it comes to the potential development of weapons of mass destruction or chemical or biological weapons, we've heard from the country's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who's categorically denied those accusations from Moscow. Let's have a listen.
Разорвали с Абхазией, как Украину разорвали с Донбассом и нашим Крымом. Обвиняют нас, тех, кто стал жертвой, тех, кто вынужден защищаться, бороться уже просто за свое право жить. Сами приходят к нам на танках и с ракетами, забирают чужое, наше, захватывают, даже стыдятся показать своим офицерам, прячут своих генералов. Скрывают от своего же народа, что отправляют срочников на эту войну, лишь бы только силы вторжения сделать побольше. А мы виноваты. Нас все обвиняют в нападках на якобы миролюбивую Россию. И что теперь? Что это за обвинение в подготовке химических атак? Вы что, решили провести дехимизацию Украины? Чем? Аммиаком? Фосфором? Что еще вы нам приготовили? Куда ударите химическим оружием? По роддому в Мариуполе? По церкви в Харькове? По детской больнице Ахмадет? Или по лабораториям, большинство из которых остались еще с советских времен и занимаются обычной наукой, обычной, а не военными технологиями? Мы адекватные люди. Я президент адекватной страны, адекватного народа. И отец 2 детей. И никакого химического или любого другого оружия массового поражения на нашей земле никто не разрабатывает. И весь мир это знает. Вы это знаете. И если вы сделаете что-то подобное против нас, вы получите жесточайший санкционный ответ.
And well, what do we know so far about the UN Security Council's engagements?
Well, the message from the Security Council is there's really been a huge amount of condemnation from Russia's actions when it comes to the US and its allies, of course, that strong rebuttal from Russia itself. As we know, Russia has a veto-wielding power at the Security Council, so when it comes to tangible action that can come out of the Security Council, any kind of actions, whether it be sanctions or other kind of punitive measures, well, very unlikely indeed. When it comes to what the UN can do going forward, though, well, there's huge appeals from UN members and the UN itself to call for more talks. Of course, we've already had 3 rounds of peace negotiations that have failed to result in any kind of tangible action on the ground when it comes to a cessation of hostilities. The UN, their message is that efforts must be ramped up when it comes to these negotiations. There are also some stark warnings when it comes to the humanitarian situation on the ground as well. The UN now estimating that some 564 civilians have lost their lives in Ukraine, warning that that figure could be far higher. They warn that 2 million people are internally displaced in Ukraine, 2.5 million people have fled the country as well. They also warn that some 26 healthcare centres have been targeted and have been struck since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That is, of course, a huge concern. The UN warning that attacks on civilians, attacks on highly densely populated civilian areas may amount to war crimes. Of course, the response from Moscow has been very clear. They say that they have not been attacking civilians or civilian areas or healthcare facilities. Shahan?
All right, thanks for that. William Denselow, live for us in New York.